Am I the asshole for telling my family no more to monthly family dinners?
Ever since my dad was a kid, our family has done monthly family dinners, nicer ones than your average family dinner.
It's something our family did when my siblings and I were kids too. We'd have grandparents over and we'd all have a nicer dinner together.
When my siblings and I grew up, we still did it, only instead of what happened before, where branches broke off over time and did their own, they decided we should include partners, spouses, and our kids as a whole in one. By the time I was 19, the family had decided they would take turns hosting each month to lessen the burden.
My wife was excited to be a part of them at first. We started during our relationship. I did the cooking to start and then she took over after a while because she wanted to.
My family had seemingly got along with my wife before this point, but they were overly harsh of her cooking, with the exception of my 2 younger siblings.
She tried to make them happy but no dice. I told them they could be kinder.
They said she should cook better or cook different things.
My wife didn't make anything they don't eat. But nothing was right. She grew frustrated and I grew suspicious. So we hosted a couple of months ago and I told my wife we were going to pretend I did the cooking. Just to see. She told me she felt like they just weren't fond of her food. I pointed out nobody had the same amount of complaints as them and they even criticized the steak and potatoes they all seemed to go crazy for. She went along with the plan, and when my family thought I cooked it, they loved it. Said it was so good my wife had decided to let a real talent take over. That it was so nice to have something a little different, curry, and all this very lovely stuff. My younger brother and sister weren't fooled. But they enjoyed watching the rest of the family dig a hole. When the rest of my family heard it was my wife's food and not mine, they tried so hard to backtrack on all the nice stuff. The rest of the dinner went in tense silence and my wife's eyes were opened. I told her I was done with these dinners and she was my priority. She felt a little bad. I told her we could have dinners with my younger brother and sister sometimes. It's less stress anyway. When we didn't show up to last month's dinner or this one, my parents and siblings started asking questions. I told them each time we weren't going again, but missing 2 made it sink in. They told me we need to be there. I said never again. My wife doesn't deserve their disrespect. I told them they ruined what they wanted by being assholes to her. They said I was overreacting, making very relationship-harming choices, and treating them badly for simply having issues with my wife's food. They also said to think of future kids and how they'll miss out. Some of it got to my wife a little, which I have tried to reassure her about. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. It's pretty clear the issue isn't her food. It's her. For whatever reason they don't seem to like her. Good for you for standing up to them. It sounds like your family dislikes your wife, not the cooking. I completely understand why you stopped attending the dinners, not the asshole. But you really need to have a conversation with your family on why they are mean to your wife. It is unlikely this behavior will change just because she stopped cooking. They will start criticizing something else about her. Also, no, you do not want your future children surrounded by people who criticize their mom for no reason. You don't want them thinking it is okay for themselves to act like this, or for future partners to treat your children like this. Not the asshole. Treating them badly for simply having issues with my wife's food. Except you proved that they didn't have issues with your wife's food. They treated her badly because they apparently have issues with her. Unless there's missing info, it sounds like they wanted to be mean just for the sake of it. You mentioned your wife made curry. Is she Indian? Is your family perhaps racist? Not the asshole, obviously. How terrible for you and for your wife. Not the asshole. The irony. They were the ones who made the relationship-harming choices. When they were caught, they doubled down instead of apologizing and checking in on the why of their behavior so they could grow and move past it. You did right by your wife and your family. Not the asshole. Your kids won't be missing much other than the company of toxic relatives who treat their mother poorly, yet she is too kind to hold a grudge. Why do some of your family treat her like that? Do they treat all in-laws this poorly? Am I the asshole for telling my sister she isn't the type of person I want my daughters to look up to? My sister and I are complete opposite. My sister doesn't have many accomplishments, and the last thing I remember her achieving is graduating high school. At 20 she dropped out of college because she was pregnant. She moved in with the father and for 10 years they were a family. All that time she didn't had a job even when her son started school. Those two never married and he left her about 2 years ago. She is now pregnant again, new dad isn't involved, works at fast food and barely scraps by. She is constantly asking for money. She actually wanted to move in with me and my kids. My wife travels a lot. I have 2 daughters and my sister told me she wanted to be closer. She wanted to move into my home, that it would be good for the girls to have a woman they could look up to. She never liked that my wife travels. This isn't the first time she has brought it up and I have turned her down politely many times. My sister brought it up again last night. I told her no. This resulted in a heated conversation with her asking why. I decided to be honest and I told her that she isn't the type of woman I want my kids to look up to. I also listed the reasons above. She called me a jerk. The family is now on my ass about this, saying I was heartless to tell her that. They also want me to apologize. Am I the asshole? Ultimately not the asshole. You could be polite but still firm. If she's insisting on moving in, something must be going on for her. Not the asshole. Surprised no one's acknowledging that she said your kids need someone to look up to when your wife is in the picture. She can't disrespect your wife and expect for her feelings to be coddled. You've said no before and she was pushing for a response. People need to be responsible for their life decisions, and you shouldn't be on the hook to house her and take care of her kids. Not the asshole, but your sister is. She shouldn't have demanded that you let her move in with you. She can ask, but she shouldn't expect the answer to be a yes. I disagree with all that saying. You could have been nicer. You could have phrased it better. I have turned her down politely many times. My sister brought it up again last night. I told her no. This resulted in a heated conversation with her asking why. You told her no nicely multiple times, and she wouldn't accept it. So you gave an answer that'll shut her up. Well, I think that there are several things to consider in this situation. It seems like she has had a hard time getting on her feet, because of having kids and being left with no support as a single parent. It sounds like she is just trying to scrape by. Is she just lazy and sees no value in pursuing more advanced options? Does she have a choice with her current circumstance? Not the asshole. You told your sister no. No is a complete sentence. You are never obligated to explain a number. She asked why and didn't like the answer. She could have been an adult and just accepted your number. Instead, she opted to challenge your no with a why. That challenge is disrespectful. It indicates a level of entitlement. It says she doesn't respect your decisions about your life. In my experience, people who challenge a no with a why are actually looking for a way to manipulate you into a yes. They want to take your why as a personal attack, thereby making them a victim. Not the asshole. Granted, you could have phrased it better, but you aren't required to respect her poor life choices, nor can anyone expect you to just agree with her moving into your home. Am I the asshole for telling my wife I hate her fridgescaping? Recently my wife has taken to fridgescaping. I guess it's a recent trend because I'd never heard about it before this. She started decorating our fridge and it was really getting on my nerves. For example, she put flowers in the fridge, in vases, in front of food, so you have to move things just to get to the food. She put all our food in fancy baskets, jars, and similar things. I know it sounds absurd, but if you just search up fridgescaping, you'll see what I'm talking about. I didn't care at first because I don't have to use the fridge much anyways, I don't cook a lot. But she's getting too meticulous with it and adding too much decor. It's made the fridge very uninviting for me. She gets upset when I get something from the fridge and don't put things back perfectly. She keeps taking it as a personal slight and acts like I've done something to deliberately hurt her. When I haven't, I just find it unnecessary to maintain such an organized fridge. Before she started this, it would take me 30 seconds to grab something quick from the fridge, whereas now it's a whole ordeal. Last weekend she confronted me after I grabbed some leftovers from the fridge and left it in disarray, according to her. I explained how I find the hobby stupid and she can decorate other things. It doesn't have to be the fridge. It gets in the way when I want to quickly eat. When I come home from work hungry and tired and want to grab a quick bite, it's frustrating. I also talked to my son about it, and he finds it annoying, which I told her. She didn't argue back after that, and she's removed all of the decorations from the fridge, which I have to admit has been relieving.
But she's also been acting very distant towards me and just hasn't been herself, and has been weird intimacy-wise. Am I the asshole for this?
No assholes here. It's reasonable to not want too much decor in the fridge, or to not be scolded if you don't put things back perfectly.
But you did totally belittle something that brought your wife joy and made her feel creative. Not surprised she's been distant. Most people don't like it when you shit on their interests, and most people like it even less when it's a spouse.
I'm nicer to my friends about their interests that I don't like than you are to your literal wife. Person shrugging, not understanding that it might make her distant is completely clueless of you, to be honest. Edit. Apparently if you tell people to be nice to their partners, they get really triggered. Tell about fridgescaping. Thanks. I hate it. Not the asshole.
If it makes someone happy to store food in attractive containers and neatly organize the fridge, that would be one thing. But adding crap like flowers, framed pictures, and assorted tchotchkes that make it difficult to use the fridge for its intended purpose is just plain ridiculous.
Soft, you're the asshole.
Your overall point is fine. The fridge is a shared communal space that everyone needs to compromise on. It sounds like since both you and your son didn't like the fridgescaping that the majority of the household wasn't on board with it.
I do think, therefore, that it's fine to ask her to stop.
However, here's where you went wrong.
I explained how I find the hobby stupid.
You probably didn't mean it this way, but it came across like you calling her stupid for enjoying something you didn't.
This is why she's being cold towards you. Ultimately, this was a relatively minor thing that brought her joy and mildly inconvenienced you.
It's fine to ask her to stop or to change how she's doing it, but calling it stupid, and her by extension, crosses the line into assholedom.
You are the asshole.
Not because fridgescaping doesn't sound annoying as hell, but because you apparently contribute so little to the food of the household that it took you quite a bit to start to care about something this impractical.
What grown adult doesn't use the fridge much anyways? If you're leaving almost all the kitchen operations to your wife, except apparently grabbing leftovers sometimes, the fridge is her domain.
And the fact that when she treated it as her domain and tried to get some joy out of the monotonous slog that is cooking every single meal, you said, "This is stupid," instead of, "Can we share the kitchen responsibilities and therefore space and decisions more evenly?" Makes you the AH. People seem to think that because your wife's hobby is stupid that makes it all right to be a dick to her. It does not. There are ways to communicate your dissatisfaction without telling her something she did was stupid. That's what your wife is upset about. Not that you didn't like it, but because of the way you told her.
And for bringing your son into it. You are the asshole. Light-esh, both of you use the fridge, so what goes on in there is a mutual decision. I would have leaned towards just her, but then you called her hobby stupid when it is clearly important to her.
Meanwhile, she is upset because you expressed frustration regarding the impact her hobby has on the rest of the household and would rather keep things weird. You need to sit down and talk, maybe figure out why she latched on to this trend so hard, and maybe figure out where she can apply this creativity elsewhere in the house that is less disruptive to basic functionality.
Am I the asshole for throwing a gift from my dad's wife in the trash before I moved out of their house? I, 18M, moved out of my dad's house last month, the day I turned 18. I no longer live in the same town, and instead I moved in with 3 of my friends who are starting college next month, and I'm about to start trade school. I'm working until trade school starts to afford rent and food. The 4 of us are splitting the cost between us. I did not take money from my dad.
The day I left, my dad's wife gave me this photo album, saying it was a growing-up gift.
This photo album was photos of the 7 years since she and my dad married.
I did not appreciate the gift, nor did I want it, which I told her to her face.
She told me to take it and I should have family photos when I moved out. Before I left, I threw the album into the trash.
To explain why I did this, what the background is.
When I was 10, my mom died. She had an allergic reaction while we were out for a celebratory dinner for my dad, and she died on the way to the hospital. Mom was the glue that held us together. Dad and I were never very close before she died.
But 6 weeks later, my dad had already met his wife, and they boxed up all of my mom's things, clothes, jewelry, photos of her, her phone, keys, anything that was just hers, and they brought it to the dump.
I never got anything, and neither did any of her family. I was furious, and I will never forgive my dad for what he did. The very next day he moved that woman in. They were married 4 months later.
Had a small but still an actual formal wedding.
They dragged me to it and pretended everything was fine and normal. She even gave a speech about being so excited to have a son of her own and all the adventures we'll have together. When I was 12, I got copies of a couple of photos of Mom from extended family and put them in my room.
Dad's wife found the photos and she removed them, saying I didn't need those and I'd bring everyone down having them in the house.
I yelled at her, cursed at her, wished her dead and erased, and my dad yelled at me for disrespecting his wife. I told him that day I wish he died instead of my mom. He told me he wished he'd let my grandparents take me after the fight they had about Mom's stuff going to the dump. I told him I wish he had.
The 7 years of living with the two of them were hell.
I'm so glad I'm gone. I have no respect for either of them, and I don't care that my dad lost someone too. He threw her away, and not just from him.
After I settled in my apartment, Dad suddenly remembered my number for the first time in 3 years and called me out for upsetting and disrespecting his wife by throwing her gift away.
He told me she did it out of love. I ignored it. She sent me a text on Dad's phone telling me I should be surrounded by happy family memories, which was why she made the album. I sent a photo of my room which has photos of my mom, ones I got copies of.
That was the only reply I made.
But I got several more texts, some from an unknown number after I blocked Dad, saying I was acting spitefully. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole. Your response was appropriate. And this is definitely the winning post for most suspicious circumstances.
Not the asshole. Your dad and his wife are deadbeats and should have never thrown away things that were rightfully yours. Just filing this photo album in the same place you put the ones of my mom. #trashbin.
Not the asshole. I hope the coming years are filled with happiness. Best of luck.
As a dad, I don't know how someone can just move on so quick, get married and pretend like nothing happened.
It's madness. Not the asshole. Honestly, after everything your dad and his wife put you through, it's completely understandable that you wouldn't want that photo album.
They erased your mom's memory and then tried to replace it with their own narrative.
That's not okay, and it's really dismissive of your feelings.
You've been through a lot, and you're not obligated to keep something that represents a painful time in your life. Moving out and focusing on your future sounds like the best thing for you right now.
Keep those memories of your mom close, those are the ones that matter.